Our scripture reading for today will be from Matthew 7, verses 7 through 11. Matthew 7, 7 through 11. We'll be reading from the American Standard Version. Ask, and it shall be given you. Seek, and ye shall find. Knock, and it shall be opened unto you. For everyone that asketh receiveth, and he that seeketh findeth. And to him that knocketh it shall be opened. Or what man is there of you who, if his son shall ask him for a loaf, will give him a stone? Or if he shall ask for a fish, will give him a serpent? If ye then, being evil, know how to give good gifts unto your children, how much more shall your Father who is in heaven give good things to them that ask him? You may be seated.
I don't know how everybody else feels about what we're doing this year with More Than Sunday. I feel like over the first 2 months of this year, after all these years of preaching and teaching and just following Jesus, I feel like I'm growing. Growing by slowing down. Growing by trying to spend more time with God. And I don't know if you'll relate to this or not. I'm just talking about the experience in my own life, and maybe you feel the same way. Sometimes I'm so busy trying to do something for God that I don't take the time that I need to take to just be with Him. And I've thought about this in my own life as a father, and I love our 3 children, and I'm grateful for things that our children do for us because they love us. But I really like it when they spend time with us. And that's the joy of our salvation. I would have to believe what brought you here this morning is you want to be with God. You want to spend time with God. And I can't think of anything that we're going to talk about throughout the course of this year that brings us more into fellowship with God than when we talk to Him. I read a book on prayer one time that started out, I don't believe in prayer. That was kind of shocking. It's a book on prayer. You don't believe in prayer. He said, I believe in God, therefore I pray. We sometimes say prayer changes things. No, God changes things. That's why I pray. I want to be in a relationship with God. I want to talk to God. Sometimes I don't even want anything from Him. I just want to be with Him. Sometimes we can understand that in other relationships that we have. I don't want anything from my wife. I just want to be with her. I don't need anything from my friends. I just want to be around them. And I think that's part of having a healthy walk with God. You got to spend time with Him. So there's an old song that encourages us to whisper a prayer in the morning, whisper a prayer at noon, whisper a prayer in the evening. Keep your heart in tune. God answers prayer in the morning. God answers prayer at noon. God answers prayer in the evening. Listen, keep your heart in tune. Charles Hodge, it's either Prayer, the Voice of Faith, or My Daily Walk with God. One of those 2 books. He says, start your day with God. Spend your day with God. End your day with God. As you go through the day, just check in. Just talk to God. Whatever's going on in your life, talk to Him about what's going on in your life. Yes, morning, noon, and night, but there's something about starting the day right. There's something about early morning prayer and getting off to a good start, setting the tone before you do anything else. check in with the Father. Now, why do we do that? Why get up early to pray? And listen, the first one is pretty simple because you love God and you can't wait. You can't wait to talk to Him. You know, isn't it funny that we sometimes, in all of our relationships, we become complacent? It happens in romantic relationships. It happens in marriage. You know, we sometimes talk about, well, we got to rekindle the flame. What happened to the flame? What happened to the love that you have for that person? I mean, there was a time you couldn't wait to see that person. You couldn't wait to talk to her. You couldn't wait to be with her. Why is it? The joy of our salvation is that the sin that separated us from God's been taken out of the way. We're reconciled to God through the death of His Son. We have a relationship with Him. To what? To pay no attention to Him. We have a theme more than Sunday. Why would we have a theme more than Sunday? Because for some people, they've limited their relationship with God to what happens in a building like this. And I'm telling you, it's more than Sunday. I can't wait to wake up and start talking to God about the things that are going on in my life. We love Him. Jesus is asked to identify the first and greatest commandment. You know where He goes with this. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. Folks, that's the first and greatest commandment. Most important reason to get up early and pray is because you love God. You want to spend time with Him. And you want to do that before you do anything else. You desire to be in His presence. Been reading this book, Praying Like Monks, Living Like Fools, an invitation to the wonder and the mystery of prayer. And I'm only about a chapter in. I mentioned a book in a sermon last week, and can I just tell you, I'm not on the hook for everything these people. I quote the book, read it, right? But one of my mentors said, reading books is like eating fish. Pick out the bones. I'm picking out the parts I like. Okay. If you read this book, I'm not signing on for everything this guy said, but I like this part. He said, in a world that for the most part rejects God, ignores Him, chooses any distraction over Him, imagine how much it must bless the heart of the Father to hear, I want to be with you. I choose you, God. Over every other option, I choose you. Prayer is about presence. Before it's about anything else, prayer doesn't begin with outcomes. We think about, I'm asking God to do something that I want Him to do. I want Him to act in a certain way in my life, and I'm going to Him because I want that outcome. And He says it doesn't begin there. Prayer is the free choice to be with the Father, to prefer His company. In our desire for certain outcomes, our confusion over not getting those outcomes, we're tempted to begin there, getting what we want from God, right? But we can't brush past simply being with the Father. Folks, prayer starts with presence. And love is the greatest motivation for spending time with God. Could you imagine, would you ever believe it? I love my wife. I wish she'd leave me alone. I mean, does that sound right to anybody? What if she said it to me? Now, does it make more sense? But listen, I love my wife. I want to spend time with her. I love my children, but when they call to tell me about what's going on in their day, right? I mean, does that make sense? They want to share their life. They want to tell me about their dreams and their hopes and their goals and just what's going on in their life. And sometimes they want advice, and sometimes they just want someone to listen and approve and encourage. And why do we sign up for that? Well, because we love them. Because we're in relationship with them. I mean, to say that I love God and I never talk to Him, what a terrible waste of love. We have this relationship to nurture, to develop, to enjoy. And I think prayer is the primary place where that happens, where this incredible thing. I speak and God listens to me. As I talk to Him about the things that are going on in my life, He listens to me. And we have this promise from God. I love them that love me, and those that seek me early shall find me. Do you know, God's not hiding. He's not making it difficult. If you want to talk to Him, He'll listen to you. Why get up early and do that? Well, because I love God and I can't wait to talk to Him. And because, listen, you're going to do that if you have your spiritual priorities in order. I thought Wayne Jones had a great lesson last Sunday night. He kicked off and introduced for the month of March as we focus on prayer. And Fred, in his prayer this morning, talked about how there was a veil and the Holy of Holies. And you listen, you couldn't go into the presence of God. You couldn't go into the Holy of Holies. Only certain people and only at limited times during the year. But Jesus, He took that veil out of the way. And now we have this incredible access to God, and we can come boldly to the throne of grace. Listen, this is Hebrews 4:16. We can come boldly to the throne of grace that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in time of need. You know, I meet people all the time that, listen, they need God. You say, well, Tim, yeah, everybody needs God, right? Some people don't know it. We all need Him. There are moments in your life where you're more aware of that need, but you need God. And guess what? The door is wide open. You need grace, you need mercy, you need wisdom, you need guidance. You just need the comfort that comes from His presence. You can go to the Father, and it ought to be important. It ought to be a priority in your life to do that. Why don't we do it? Some people are too busy, too distracted. And listen, one of the books I'm reading, the guy talked about we don't pray because we're too distracted. We carry the internet around in our pocket. I can't argue with that. I can't remember anything anymore. I don't have to. I just ask Google. I mean, my memory's shot because I don't work on it anymore. But how distracting is it? How many times have you thought to yourself, since I got up here, I might take a quick look at my phone? Now, look, I know it happens, right? Why is that we don't have any time to talk to God? We're distracted by other things. We're not the only ones. Distraction or not having our priorities in order, that's always been a problem. Jesus tells this story in Luke 14 about a certain man that was preparing a great banquet. He invited many guests. At the time of the banquet, he sent his servant to tell those who had been invited, come, for everything's now ready. Come. There's a feast and you're invited. And they all alike began to make excuses. The first said, I've just bought a field and I must go and see it. Please excuse me. Another said, I've just bought 5 yoke of oxen. I'm on my way to try them out. Please excuse me. Another one said, I just got married. I can't come. God is sending an invitation. All things are ready. You know, come to the feast, but people are preoccupied with what they believe are more important things. One of these guys has a land deal in place. He's got to go out and look at the new field. Another one has just purchased some oxen. He's in a hurry to see whether or not he made a good purchase. One of them just got married, and he doesn't feel like he should neglect this new relationship. He's got to prioritize this new relationship, this new marriage. And Jesus speaks into all of these things that compete for our time and attention, and He says, seek first the kingdom. His kingdom and His righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. The kingdom has to come first. Before business before hobbies, before family. People get up in the morning and they're in a hurry to get to the office. They've got to make a living. Their mind maybe is set on reading the newspaper, watching the news, getting in shape, pursuing a hobby. It doesn't matter how early I get here, there's somebody running around this lake out here. I'm thinking, if I'm getting up that early, there should be donuts involved. That's just a personal opinion. There's an info commercial, you know, you can lose all this weight. It's only going to take you 25 minutes a day. And there's a guy on there, he lost 50 pounds. You know, they show you the before and after picture. You know, he lost 50 pounds, just 25 minutes a day. And he gets up every morning at 6:30, and before he does anything else, he's taking care of his body. What about your soul? I mean, we're taking care of our finances. We're taking care of our relationships with others. We're taking care of our physical health. We've got our hobbies. Every time I think about prayer and the priority of prayer, and I've used this a lot in sermons. Martin Luther has this quote, "It's well for us to let prayer be the first employment in the early morning, the last in the evening. Avoid diligently those false and deceptive thoughts which say, I'm going to pray an hour from now," right? I've got to perform this or that. There's something else I got to do first. For such thoughts a man quits prayer for business which lays hold of and entangles him, so that he comes not to pray the whole day long. And I just think that's reality. And if you're honest with yourself, most of us have been guilty of that. I need to pray. I want to pray. I should pray, but I'm going to do this or that. I've got something pressing. I'm going to get that done. When I do that, then I'm going to pray. But as soon as you do that one thing, then there's another thing, and then after that, something else. What happens? The day gets away, and as you go to bed at night, you realize, I never did take the time. Why don't you make this the first priority in the morning before you do anything else? Well, we do that when God does have the highest place in our lives. Well, why get up early and pray? Because it was a practice of Jesus. Because Jesus and other good men did this as part of their devotion to God. It's Mark 1:35. Very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, went off to a solitary place where he prayed. And I want you to think about what that must have been like to be born into the world, God in the flesh, not only to know the prophecies that talked about his entrance, his birth into the world, but his ministry, his death, all the things that would happen to him, that Jesus at some point would have become painfully aware of these prophecies that described some in stunning detail the immense suffering that he would have to endure. Jesus was tempted. He was tested. He was just as human as we are. He got hungry and thirsty and tired. And we know that there were moments where he got frustrated. And he would say to the disciples, "O ye of little faith." His whole life is leading up to a painful conclusion. His disciples betrayed, denied, and deserted him. The enemies mocked and ridiculed and despised him. The Romans slapped and scourged and crucified him. And you wonder, how did he manage to do everything he did, knowing ahead of time that he had an appointment at the place of the skull? That the entire momentum of his ministry was leading him rapidly towards the cross. Every day of his life, what was leading to the ultimate conclusion that he would become the atoning sacrifice for our sins. How did he do that? Well, Jesus maintained a close relationship with his Father. He talked to him all the time. And you know, there are a lot of things that are happening in our lives. I thought about it Just as we were coming into the auditorium and as we were singing together and communing together, and you look around and they're all, listen, there's a lot of diversity, there's a lot of differences, but folks, we all have one thing in common. There is one person that walked into this building this morning that isn't carrying some burden, that isn't dealing with some discouragement or disappointment, pain or loss. We're all dealing with the difficulties of life. And can I just ask you, if you're a child of God, why are you dealing with those things without Him? Why are you trying to carry those burdens without talking to your Father about it? Why are you making difficult decisions, some that you've thought to yourself, I don't even know what to do? Well, why haven't you talked to Him about it? Listen, Jesus has this whole ministry. Even as a 12-year-old, He says, I must be about my Father's business. He knew what He was about. And He understood the suffering that would come. And you know, one way that He prepared Himself to face all of that. It's not just in the Garden of Gethsemane where Jesus prays, not my will, but thy will be done. But throughout the course of His life, He's talking to God. And we see the same thing in someone like King David, a man after God's own heart. Psalm 5, the first 3 verses, give ear to my words, O Lord, consider my sighing, listen to my cry for help, my King and my God, for to you I pray. In the morning, O Lord, you hear my voice. In the morning, I lay my requests before you and wait in expectation. Psalm 55, verses 16 and 17, but I call to God and the Lord saves me. Evening, morning, and noon I cry out in distress, and He hears my voice. Psalm 63 and verse 1, O God, you're my God. Early I will seek you. My soul thirsts for you. My flesh longs for you in a dry and thirsty land where there's no water. David is the ruler over God's people. He's not just responsible for the social, political well-being of God's people. He is responsible for their religious and spiritual health and strength. Now, how do you carry that burden? Where do you find the strength to meet that challenge? He got up early. And he began his day with God. And he said, God, you're going to hear my voice. In the morning when I get up, you're going to hear from me. I'm not going to rush into all of the responsibilities of the day, all of the obligations that a man like that would carry because of his position. And so many people depended on him and needed him. And he knew that as much as everybody else needed him, he needed God. And that he was going to talk to God. He said, you're going to hear my voice in the morning. The last thought this morning, get up early and get a head start on the devil. You know, it's interesting how we're all of one mind, one thought. We're bound together in so many ways because we're all reading from the same Bible that God has given to us. And Fred was praying a lot of things. We didn't collaborate. I didn't visit with him unless he peeked at my outline when I wasn't looking. But he prayed about some of these things this morning. And I don't know how he could have known that these things were going to be in the sermon, but you do have an adversary. There is an enemy that prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. And he's pretty good at what he does. And there's something, and I've prayed a lot about this, and I'm not exaggerating when I say these first couple of months of this year as we focused on spiritual disciplines has been really good for my faith. It's been good for my soul. Do you know the best place for you to be, the safest place for you to be, is in the presence of God? And there's something about being close to Him that has helped me to be stronger. I feel stronger when I'm close to Him. When Luke, in his gospel account, when he records the account of the temptation in Luke 4 and verse 13. He said, when the devil had ended every temptation, he departed from him until an opportune time. And we sometimes summarize those three temptations as the lust of the eye, the lust of the flesh, the boastful pride of life. And Jesus passed the test. I mean, each one of those, he quoted Scripture to the devil. He overcomes the temptation, but the devil wasn't done with Jesus. And the next time he tempts you won't be the last time he tempts you. He's looking for this opportunity. He's always looking for an opportunity to test us. And knowing what we know about the adversary and how he works, that should make us want to do everything we can to protect ourselves, to arm and guard ourselves. And a lot of us start the day without thinking about the fact that there's an adversary with destructive power. He has hurt us in the past, and if he can, he'll hurt us again in the future. And something about starting your day with God arms you. It gives you a head start on the adversary. In Matthew 6:13, lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. You know, you can even start out in the morning talking to God about the things you know are going to be a problem for you. If you've always been a person who struggles with alcohol, you can talk to God about that first thing in the morning. If you've been a person who struggles with lust, you can talk to God about that first thing in the morning. If prejudice has been a problem in your heart, you can talk to God about that before you run into anybody. If gossip has been a problem in your life, and you know that you struggle with that. If greed and materialism and selfishness, whatever it is that is a besetting sin in your life, something you've battled over and over again, why not talk to God about that before you face the day? But before you face the first challenge or test in your life, why not ask Him specifically, not just lead us not into temptation, but name the temptation. Talk to God about the specific area in your life where you've struggled before. I think too many days end poorly because they get off to a bad start. The way you start the day is going to affect the way you finish it. I don't know where I read this. I've got a little saying on a card in my office that the more I commit myself to the Lord in the morning, the less I have to confess to Him at night. I just think it's true. I think the more I focus on His presence in my life early in the morning, the more connected I can stay with Him throughout the course of the day. You know, sometimes we read in the Bible that He's a strong tower. He's a refuge. He's a hiding place. Well, listen, I run to Him and I'm safe. That's where you need to be. And that's what happens when you start your day in prayer. I want to end with this passage. Jesus is with His disciples in the Garden of Gethsemane. He's been praying. He finds them asleep. It's Matthew 26, 40 and 41. He returned to His disciples and found them sleeping. Could you men not keep watch with me for 1 hour? He says, watch and pray so that you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the body is weak. I want to be clear about this, okay? Because I don't want to preach another sermon about baptism and about becoming a Christian. If you haven't been baptized and you need to make the good confession that Jesus is the Son of God, you need to repent of sins and you need to be baptized. We are ready to help you with that this morning, and you can come during the invitation song. We want you to come. We've been praying for some of you to make that decision, but that's not the invitation this morning. Listen, the invitation is to live up to your privileges as a child of God. You've been saved by the blood of Jesus to be in a relationship with God, not to ignore Him and to carry the burdens of life alone. And you don't have to start with an hour. That can feel intimidating or overwhelming. How about this as an invitation this morning? You make a commitment that every day this week, before you do anything else, when you roll out of bed in the morning, you're going to spend the first 5 minutes with God. Talk to Him about anything you want to do. And if you can get through 5 minutes tomorrow, then the day after that, maybe 10. You know what? This amazes me. People will say, you want to go running? I'm like, for what? Is somebody behind me? I mean, you know what I'm saying? But then when Callie and I started running, you know, a weird thing happened. The more I would do that, and there were days I did not want to do that, but when I started doing it, I enjoyed it, and I wanted to do more of it. And I found that in a lot of other experiences in my life, something that originally I hadn't done, I didn't want to do, but I started to do, and then I wanted to do it more. And can I tell you, if you'll just start talking to God, I think what's going to happen is you won't be able to limit what you want to say to Him to just 5 minutes. And you'll be looking for opportunities, not just in the morning, but all day long, to just check in and just talk to Him about what's going on in your life. And you know, this is a remarkable thing to me. He's interested in what you had to say to Him, and He will listen to you. And so I want to invite you into this more than Sunday relationship with God, where you spend time every day. Just be with the Father. Just spend time with Him. Now, there may be somebody here this morning that's going through some difficulty, some hardship. You've messed up and you've sinned, and you just need some help, some encouragement. You need prayer, and you need friendship, and you need forgiveness. Well, you're invited to come, not to us. You're invited to come to God this morning as we stand and sing.